Thank you very much. Is that okay for everybody? I guess what Bill talked about was great, and I mean I think there's a lot of similarities there, and the key messaging there is something I've touched on before. It's just that sponsorship for an athlete, sponsorship compared to a donation, and it's just sponsorship is much more sustainable and something that kind of both parties can feel good about, and all the points he touched on about understanding the value that you derive and the things that you can do. I would say the key messaging though is sitting working on kind of on Bill's side, on the corporate side, you're sitting and working on full-blown pitches and presentations. As an amateur athlete, you kind of need to sit down and do that work, because you won't get a call from Bell saying, okay, let's set up a call 3 weeks from now and let's sit down for a 45-minute session, you can pitch me. It's going to be somebody you bumped into in the elevator or somebody you ran into somewhere, and you've got that little speck of hope. And you got to have your kind of story ready to go. And so that kind of is hopefully the nice segue, because what I'm touching on is obviously much more grassroots. And Bill said it. A lot of this stuff can go and get you a bike, and that's not a trivial statement. For a lot of us, a couple $1,000 goes a long way, and it's working with your first, maybe it's your later sponsors, but your first couple sponsors just to get started. That's what it's all about. It's a couple $1,000 here and there, and that's how it kind of gets the ball rolling. So I'll get started. As Wendy mentioned, I mean, I'm a recent convert to the sport of long track speed skating, and kind of what seems like a former life. I was an investment banker and media professional. And after the games, I guess I was inspired. And the theory going, I distinguished myself in investment banking as a hard worker, where the norm is kind of 80 hours a week. So I'd always thought, I wonder if I'd applied this to some other field or something else. I wonder what I could do. So that was kind of the idea, always bounce around back in your head about other things you could do if you decided to do something else. And so with the games, and being 25 and kind of 230 pounds, I saw the door of my athlete era of my life closing. And so I wanted to take one last shot, and so I wanted to pick a winter sport and see if I committed everything I could to it, how far could I go? So basically with that decision was the beginning of me beginning to develop my athlete brand. So I don't know, okay, perfect. So what is an athlete brand? In essence, it's your story. It's what you stand for, what you represent. It's kind of what people whisper to each other when your face goes on TV as you're set to compete, and kind of, if you were to go back and forth bouncing around, you're not talking about these people's, their accomplishments necessarily. It's that story. It's that thing that they really embody. So it's kind of that little bit of color that draws people in. So for the sake of argument, I'll use Twitter, and I've put up, these are all speed skaters. And so I'm going to be talking a lot about speed skating. I'll say your Twitter bio is kind of your brand, let's say. And so you really do need to work at it. And the people on the left, I mean, you never want your Twitter bio, if that's everything you represent, it should never be able to be cut and pasted and put it on somebody else's. So you want to work at it and differentiate yourself and start to add, again, that little bit of color. And like I was saying, you never know. Maybe you got a tweet that's retweeted and somebody sees it and they quickly click on your name, and if it just said, for me, long track speed skater, I've lost that chance at engagement. I've lost that opportunity to begin a relationship with a simple follow. I had the chance and I lost it. So by spending time developing I got 160 characters, you should be able to use them all. Working through your bio, put your hometown in there, and then obviously have a link to a blog. So the hardest part of your blog or your website will be the About page, but this is what this is kind of all about. So if you're having trouble thinking about what your brand is, here's a scenario that hopefully helps, and it reminds me of my days when I was at McGill interviewing, and I remember sitting down in my first couple interviews where my parents are here, they know I got blown out of the water. It's like a process just like anything else. You become good at interviewing, but there's definitely some bumps along the road. And so I sat there, and the guy clearly looked at my resume, clearly looked at my transcript and reviewed it, and he basically put it aside and said, tell me a little bit about yourself. I was kind of stumbling. I was like, okay, well, I used to work at Canaccord. He's like, no, I read your previous work experience. Tell me a bit about yourself. And I kind of went to maybe my GPA, and he's like, Now I got that, and I just blew it. I absolutely blew it. And basically he was saying, tell me a bit about yourself, and that was the hardest question of the day. So as an athlete, think of this scenario. You're sitting with a potential sponsor, and the sponsor says, I understand you're a fantastic athlete. That's awesome. Now tell me a bit about yourself. You can't freeze there. That can't be kind of the be-all, end-all. So what would you say? What do you represent? What outside of a list of sports-related accomplishments would others say about you? As an athlete, your brand is you. You represent it in everything that you do. Every meet and greet, every competition, every Facebook status update. It's what a sponsor's buying. It's that alignment with your brand. And as Bill mentioned, that Steve Nash clip is absolutely perfect. It has nothing to do with him as a basketball player. It's just him. It's just a dude. So, I mean, that's what they want, and it resonates with everybody. So a major aspect of the athlete sponsorship arrangement is you acting as an ambassador for that business. So, what do you stand for? So why is it important? We can't all stand for results. So if you're a speed skater and you're going to go on results, and it's results, and that's your story, and you're sticking to it, your Twitter avatar better look like this. Because if you're not her, you can't play that card. And so if results are your be-all, end-all, you better be the best in the world. If, as a sponsor, I met someone and their whole story was, I'm the 6th best speed skater in Canada, which, believe me, is phenomenal, and I wish I could say it. But if that's all you have, if I was a sponsor, I'd say, can you introduce me to the other 5 guys? You've given yourself one thing to differentiate yourself and immediately told me there's 5 better people. So as a sponsored athlete, brands want to connect with you, leverage your story to entertain and, as Bill alluded to, kind of entertain and inspire employees and clients. They need to feel connected with your story. Are you an underdog, a hometown hero, comeback story, leader who exudes confidence, super clutch, outstanding member of the community? Are you the volunteer extraordinaire and people don't know how you kind of get it all done? These are the types of things that a business can say, that's us. That we had a trying year where we've rebounded. There's a lot of guys that have had injuries and switched sports. A business is facing tough economic times now, and they're having to refocus and reshift. And there's a lot of ways they can align with that. So, why is it important? Why does this stuff really matter? If you're an athlete, isn't this just a huge, waste of your time? And it's away from your focus on training. The reason why it's so vital is if you don't share your story, no one will. So 2 examples are brought to mind. Okay, well, the next slide has a picture of Clara Hughes on the left and Brittany Schussler on the right. So the 2 stories are, we were spinning after practice, and Sports Center was on. And so we were all sitting there watching, and Clara Hughes comes up, and they've announced that Clara Hughes came 5th at the UCI World Road Cycling Championships, which is amazing. So it's Sports Center that goes on to the next clip. What they didn't mention is that Tara Whitten came 4th. So, Canadian, Tara Whitten came 4th. So how does that work? If it's all results, how did the person that came 5th get announced, and the person that came 4th was missed in that highlight? And then the other one is I got a Facebook message from Brittany Schussler, who's a 2-time Olympian, world champion, and that's Claire on the left, Britt on the right. And so Britt says, can we grab a coffee? I want to chat about Facebook, Twitter, and blog. And I'm always interested in the catalyst, the motives for why the athletes have decided to do it. And thank you very much. Britt told me a story that it's tough being a female speed skater in Canada. The guys are amazing. The girls are absolutely phenomenal. So if you're Britt, you're 5th in Canada. The top 4 ahead of you are Cindy Clausen, Clara Hughes, Christina Groves, Christine Nesbitt. If you're 5th in Canada, you're likely 5th in the world. So trying to crack the podium, you're competing, and every day you're just competing with, not only the best of the time, but those girls are the best of all time. And so Britt said that one World Cup, she cracked the podium. She was the only female Canadian to hit the podium for the World Cup. So she was stoked. She's like, I'm going to come home, and the domestic headlines were all going to finally be Brittany Schussler. And she gets home, and what were the headlines? Nesbitt and Groves missed podium. So it was with that Britt said, what is going on? So she decided, she decided that she had to tell her own story, because if she wasn't even willing to tell it, no one else was going to be. So that kind of brings me on to another topic that's a little bit further along, but it's basically on how to communicate that story. And there's no right answer to what I can't tell you what your brand needs to be. You really, as again Bill mentioned, it'll ring false. It's gotta be something you're connected to, and as an amateur athlete, there's no on and off switch. It's got to be something you've got to be committed to and really genuinely believe in. It doesn't need to be earth-shattering. It just needs to be whatever it is. You got to be kind of committed to it. So I guess I'll go through kind of what is my athlete brand. So I'm reminded of a Warren Buffett quote when I think of my own situation. Some people here have heard this before. A horse that can count to 10, this is the Buffett quote, a horse that can count to 10 is a remarkable horse, not a remarkable mathematician. So my goal with this journey is not to be a remarkable horse. I don't want to just simply try this and say, you know what, I ended up getting pretty good for my situation or for my story or whatever. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to, I understand kind of where I'm starting and where I've come from, but my goal is to become a solid speed skater regardless of where I started. So coming into the sport with no experience and a couple years removed from competitive sports, my goal is to make the Olympic qualifiers in December 2013. So everything I do is working towards that goal. So that was the rationale behind the saying that goes on all of my training apparel, which is use all the buffalo. Simply, it means everything on purpose. And in terms of that connection, my primary sponsor is Providence Security, and so my brother's here, and they use all the buffalo is something that they have in their monitoring station. So not only is it something I kind of connect with personally, but it's also one of the kind of it's not a core value, but it's a core phrase that the company that is one of my largest supporters that they also align with, and just the idea that what's the point of doing something if it's not if it's not an important vital part of the plan? Why are you doing it? And so as a way of supporting this journey, I've committed to sharing my story. I'll share it with anyone and everyone that's willing to listen. So a byproduct of sharing this story is having an online platform that now, again, as Bill alluded to, acts as an asset when I'm speaking to potential sponsors. I now have something that I can bring to the table. With an increased kind of quote-unquote public eye, because it's honestly, you don't need millions of people following you, but if you've got a couple hundred, they're likely everyone that matters to you anyways, so it's as if you got millions. So you need it all. I mean, everyone, all the people that kind of following and paying attention, they all matter, and it's it's a lot of eyes. So it's a small world, and just as incredible as how the support has grown for me via word of mouth and social media, it can all fall out from under me if I lose sight of my focus. So just as big-time athletes like Tiger can lose millions with a public scandal, an amateur athlete can have the same thing happen. And the guy on the right is the BC water polo player who lost his scholarship, everything from if you're online, this stuff can happen. General rules, don't light cop cars on fire. But just as quickly as kind of an online audience can be a tremendous athlete, if you're not monitoring your personal brand carefully, it can turn into a massive liability. So with a goal like I've put out there, I need a lot of support. And that support comes in many forms. But the deal is kind of I will do everything I can to make this happen. It's kind of a life-consuming agreement, not unlike most athletes. What that means is I can't get away with kind of working hard, Monday to Friday, and then going out and partying on the weekend. It's not a zero-sum game. I'm way behind. So everything I do needs to just keep building. There's no kind of trade-offs. And so how can I ask people to kind of go on a limb and support me if I don't seem fully committed to the goal myself? The odds are stacked against me, and the title of my blog even says it, Long Track, Long Shot. The message that I'm trying to send out is that I'm very aware of these odds. I credit being naive for getting into this, but it's not a message that I want to send out that I think it's easy, or I think that this is something that's just going to happen. It's not, I want to portray that this is something I'm fully committed to, and I believe that the sponsors have connected with that and said, if we can help, we can't obviously go and train for you, but if we can help, we want to be a part of it. So this means, basically what I'm saying is I'm very conscious of the message that is being sent out. So one example of this is I don't drink alcohol anymore. So in and of itself, that's not a major sacrifice, especially among athletes. But hopefully my rationale for the decision gives you a little insight into how I do go about a lot of my decisions. So this is an O'Doul's. The tagline for O'Doul's is what beer drinkers drink when they're not drinking beer, which is awesome. But it's a non-alcoholic beer. So I just posted this on Facebook. It just says, enjoying a non-alcoholic O'Doul's while watching some NFL today. Good start to recovery week. Work hard, party not quite so hard. And so I guess I have a little bit of a story on this that speaks to what I was kind of mentioning earlier, that you really never know as an amateur athlete when you're looking for $1,000 as a sponsor, $2,000 as a sponsor. You just never know where these people are going to come from and how your story is going to be told. So this is a story. I was at Kaylee's Irish Pub for a tweet up early last summer, and I ran into a Calgary realtor who's a friend of my brother Steven's. We were at the bar, and he said he was offering to buy me drinks and wanted to get me one. So I asked for a bottle of water. After he kind of stopped laughing, he suggested that I was not a real Jagger brother and that I must be kidding. And so he continued to kind of press me. And to be fair, I do have photos like this on my Facebook. So this is something from when I was in college, and this kind of talks about. My parents are probably thrilled I put this up, but this speaks to something. I was in football, and the culture in football is very different than where I'm at right now. The concept of work hard, play hard, of get the victory on Saturday and go out and light it up Saturday night, that maybe works, and maybe that's part of the team building, and that's how that works. Everyone's situation is totally different. For what I'm doing, a photo like this will kill me even faster than poor results will. This is something I need to, obviously manage. I don't take it down because it is from a long time ago, and I don't make any bones about I used to party. But this is just a great example of kind of what you need to be, very careful of. And so back to the story with the realtor is after, he basically kind of pressed me. Sorry, it's tough to see, but he kind of pressed me and said, it's not that unhealthy for you. Like, what's a beer going to do? And I said, it has nothing to do with health or diet. It's just that, I've now switched. I'm now an aspiring amateur athlete, and I've accepted funding from supporters. And I'm just not interested in spending that money on alcohol. I don't think that the money or spending money on alcohol was not part of the deal. That was not something that I pitched. And it's not something that the sponsor would have been comfortable with, so it's just simply off the table. It's not going to help me on my journey, so it's gone. And so he kind of relented and ordered me the water. And then last month, so about a year and a half after we first met, that realtor just became my latest sponsor. And he credits that first meeting with what kind of initially piqued his interest. So that goes to show you just never know. I wasn't talking to him about my decisions because I thought maybe he'd be a sponsor. It was 18 months later, and I've committed to that specific kind of idea, so I don't really, I have an easy way of communicating that. So, how do I communicate, this? Now, the logo on the left is for RSS feeds. That's the blog, and it's bigger for a reason. That's the central hub to kind of everything. So in sports, every once in a while, a technique, a piece of equipment, training method, or nutrition chip kind of changes the game. It changes the way the sport is looked at and how results are measured. Being in the sport of speed skating, I don't know how well you guys are familiar with it, but the clap skate, basically the clap skate simply changed the sport. So results pre-clap skate and post-clap skate are just looked at differently. If there's a fixed heel, you just can't do the same. You can't skate the same times. So it kind of definitively puts a line in the sand. So I feel the same way about social media and amateur athletics. It's changed the game. Before social media, amateur athletes relied on traditional media outlets to get their story out and had to compete with personalities from the major sports leagues. And with those two previous examples of Clara and Britt, it goes to show you how sometimes even you do all the right things and you train and it just doesn't happen for whatever reason because you never got your story out there. And so the plight of the amateur athlete is, it's always around funding. So Well, many Canadian sports are very well funded, including speed skating Canada. They have world-class facilities, world-class coaches. Our athletes are always ready to compete wherever the competitions are around the world. The thing that they do lack is that built-in platform. If I went to play for the Vancouver Canucks and they gave me a salary of $0, I would still have an asset. I would still have something. I play in front of a national audience. I play in front of thousands every night. I'm on billboards around the city. I still have something to take to sponsors. What some amateur athletes really lack is they have everything taken care of, but in terms of doing those extra things to kind of take care of their financial needs, they need to build their own platforms. Those platforms aren't kind of ready-made. And so one example, and one great example is basically YouTube, and why YouTube's kind of has been great for me is if I was to offer a sponsorship spot on my suit, I mean, there's nobody there. There's nobody at the Oval that watches our races. So that's not a problem just for me. That's a problem for our national team as well. So if you put a logo on mine or gold medalist Danny Morrison, for our weekend races and stuff in Calgary, it's going to the same audience that's there. But if you can film it and put it on YouTube and put that up and generate a couple thousand views within a relevant demographic to a potential sponsor, you now have an asset. So the people that are doing that and working hard, they're building their own platform, and they now have something to take. So again, that's the stuff that goes away from results. It's just these. I mean, they're hopefully pretty simple tools, and this is really why the blog is absolutely everything. Everything goes there. That's my hub. Facebook will die one day. Twitter will die one day. But I'll have everything is kind of housed on my own platform. And Twitter is unbelievable for specifically reaching out to specific individuals. And so again, as an athlete, if the ability to follow local and regional members of the sports media and share your story and kind of interact with them, that wasn't available. If that wasn't available 10 years ago, and you couldn't just interact with these reporters, and they're looking for content just like anybody else. And if you again have a solid Twitter bio with a link to your page, and they can in about a minute quickly figure out what you're about, you've got a chance there. And so I mean, I could kind of go on with this stuff forever, but that's kind of the idea. And I've been successful on a very small scale. Again, small numbers. They don't need to be huge numbers. It's just having a relevant demographic that's engaged, and then sharing your story as an amateur athlete. And again, Bill mentioned it with suffering through lots of no's. You only need like 3 yeses. So if you have like 3 or 4 businesses that are on board, you're set. So if you need to go out and talk to 100 people and get 3 yeses, you're golden. So that's kind of how I go about communicating my story. So that's it.